Hello, my name's Darren Gardner. I'm the head of Eon Drive in the UK, and it's a great pleasure to be with you this morning. I'm sorry I can't be with you in person, but I hope that you find this video to be useful and informative. If anybody would like to get in touch with me after this video, then please do so via Tony McNally, who will gladly give you my telephone number and my email address. I want to just spend the next few minutes talking to you a little bit about the work that we've done across Europe in cities like Malmo in Sweden and Copenhagen in Denmark, in Berlin in Germany, and I also want to just point like a signpost, if you like, to Bristol in the UK, who are doing some great work. For years, Coventry has been talking about climate change, the environment, low carbon economic growth, and whilst we've done some things, I don't think any city has done this yet, in the UK at least. In Coventry, we've not really delivered anything massive in terms of decarbonising a city, dealing with the impacts of climate change and mitigating against the impacts of climate change. We've done lots of good stuff, but there's so much more to do, and so I just hope that this short video will give us a few ideas of what we can do across cities, both from a technological point of view, but also commercially, from a financial perspective as well. So I'll just spend a few minutes talking about those. Let me talk to you about Malmo, if I may. Malmo is a city in Sweden, and economically it was on its knees. It's fair to say. We've been working with them for about 11 years. Their initial target was to decarbonise by 2020. We think that will now happen in 2025, which is really great going. The mayor of Malmo has really sponsored the decarbonisation of Malmo, and I think that's the important thing to draw here from Malmo, is that it requires vision, it requires political leadership, and it requires cross-party consensus. So with that vision, Malmo have been able to draw in partners like us and other infrastructure providers who have brought investment and expertise, but they've also been able to engage communities and people and citizens and homeowners and businesses, and you also need those to be on board as well. But it starts for me right at the very top. The chief exec, the leader of the council here in Coventry, have really got to own this vision, and it's got to be supported by all the political parties. If we want to decarbonise in Coventry, then it's got to be owned right at the top. So that's the first thing that we learned from Malmo. How did they do it? Well, first of all, it wasn't just an environmental argument that the mayor of Malmo was putting across. It was also an economic argument, and I think that is the second lesson that we can learn from Malmo, is that we frame conversations, whether that's with politicians or with people, not just in terms of environmental benefits but also economic benefits. Malmo was suffering economically, and the investment in energy infrastructure in Malmo has created jobs, but it's also meant that businesses could remain electrified. It meant that they could still heat, and all of those sorts of things. Energy is essential for running a business. The hospitals need energy, the schools need energy, and so lower cost energy such as renewables is good environmentally, but is also good economically. So that's the second lesson, is that we should frame our conversations with politicians and with the people, not just about climate change, but also in terms of economics as well. So what's happened? Well, a number of things have happened. I'll just give you 2 or 3 examples. The first one is Medicom Village, which is a commercial development in Malmo. It's huge. It's got a university. It's got a medical centre, which is a larger, like a small hospital really. It's got a care home and retail outlets, office, commercial type premises as well. And there we've created our own district heating scheme that we've patented. So it's using heat pumps, but the slight difference is that we are generating heat and we're generating cooling in one perfect balanced system. So let's say that the care home has got too much heat in one particular period of the day. And instead of that heat going to waste, we're able then to recycle that heat, stick it around a loop, and send it to a customer who perhaps needs that heat. So let's say it might be the hospital, or it might be some of the buildings that require heat. Now, ordinarily in a different type of system, those customers would have to pay to generate that heat or that cooling, and it's extremely inefficient. The demand for heat and cooling is perfectly matched with the supply. So just because one customer has got excess heat doesn't mean it has to go to waste. We could just send it around the system as and when another customer needs it, or we can store it as well. So we've developed an algorithm and a cloud-based software system that can match customers' demand and supply. So the impacts of that are lower bills, but also I think it's roughly about 70% carbon reduction in Medicom Village there. So that's really positive. The other example in Sweden is a small village called Simris. Simris is, I think it's about 200 homes in Simris. It's completely off-grid, but we can connect it to the national grid too, and it's completely powered by renewable energy, solar, wind, and it's got battery storage. And each of the homes has got air source heat pumps. The buildings themselves, the homes themselves, are very energy efficient. So with a combination of renewables and battery storage, heat pumps, we're able to take that village off grid. So that's less of a drain on the national grid. Now, if Simris has got excess supply, it doesn't need what they've got, and the rest of Sweden needs some of that electricity, then we can basically send kilowatt hours to the national grid. So that's 2 examples really. One an off-grid renewable electricity system in Simris, and the other one is a renewable heat and cooling system in Medicom Village, where the heat and the cooling is recycled around a system, providing energy to lots of different customers. You can find out more about those things on YouTube. So just go to our video channel, and you can just type in E.ON Ectogrid, ECTO grid, and E.ON Simris, and there's a couple of 2 or 3 minute videos that you can watch there. The second example is slightly different. It's in Copenhagen in Denmark. We own and operate a electric vehicle charging network there, about 2,000 charging points. We worked strategically with the local government there, and again it's the same lesson that we can learn from Copenhagen as we can from Malmo. The vision is right at the top with the politicians. They knew they had a problem in terms of congestion, in terms of air quality, and they also knew that this was affecting the economy within Copenhagen, but also they were responding to customer need, citizen need. Citizens were wanting to find different ways and more healthier ways of travelling around the city. So we worked strategically with the local government in Copenhagen. The answer to their problem wasn't the electric car, actually. The answer was to try and get people to walk or to cycle more, which is good for people's health. It's also extremely good for the environment. So other people sort those particular solutions out. We're not into e-bikes just yet. But for those people that do need a car, then the answer is to have a shared resource, and that shared resource, that shared car, should be electric. So we worked with other partners to create a car sharing club, a bit like Boris Bikes. You get a fob, cars dotted over the city, and you hire a car like you would get on a bike in London. Same concept, and those cars are electric. All of the electricity is sourced from 100% renewable energy, as you would expect, and I think we've now had our millionth charge, so that's going quite well in Copenhagen. So the impacts there are good in the sense that much improved air quality, because more people are cycling and walking, and when people do need to get a car, use a car, then they can basically hire an electric car. So that's really interesting, because I think the future of mobility in cities is going to be about car sharing and ride sharing. And even myself, I'm at the point where I'm not sure I really need a car. I could probably get an Uber everywhere, and certainly if Ubers were electric, then I'd be really interested. So I think the total cost of ownership of owning a car is actually quite high, and it's getting to the point where people will want to cycle, they will want to get on a bus, they will want to get on a train, and then they will want to use a shared car that should be electric. So that's what we're doing in Copenhagen and across other cities as well. So we 2,000 charging points in Denmark, and a car club, and I should say we also sort of do that in Norway and Sweden, and right across Germany as well, and we're just doing that in the UK too. So yes, that's what we're doing. Charging points in the Nordics, heat pumps and off-grid solutions in Sweden. In Germany, we're if you fly into Berlin, you come into Tegel Airport. That's going to be knocked down, and now we're working with developers to create a low carbon, hopefully a zero carbon city. There, it's going to be a city quarter. So we're integrating some of those solutions that I've already talked about, Ectogrid, working with developers to create smart homes, and something called vehicle to grid solutions, which is essentially connecting your electric vehicle to the building and to the grid and to the network there, so that you can power your car from your home. But also you can power your home from your car. You can sell any spare electricity in your battery to the national grid. So those are the sorts of things that we are doing in Germany. Closer to home, and I just want to spend the last few minutes on Bristol. Bristol is a city that we have been working with informally over the last few years. And really their vision was to decarbonise the city by 2050, long before any climate emergency was declared. In fact, when it was declared, their aspiration now is to decarbonise by 2030. And again, this is driven by the mayor. So we're learning from Bristol, from Malmo, from Copenhagen, that political leadership at the top is absolutely essential if we are to decarbonise Coventry. Bristol, so that's their vision. How are they going to do it? I should say that whilst their vision is to decarbonise by 2030, 2050, part of their vision is to deal with other issues. It's to, by doing this, to create economic growth. It's by decarbonising the city, it should provide opportunities for local supply chains. It should provide opportunities for local people. It should deal with financial exclusion. It should deal with health impacts. It should deal with fuel poverty. It should deal with better education. It should deal with all sorts of social and economic issues. So whilst the headline is to be a zero carbon city by 2030, actually part of Bristol's vision is so much bigger than that, and decarbonisation is almost an enabler for other things. So they released a prospectus last August, I believe, and in that prospectus was a requirement. I suppose they were looking for an investor or an investors, and they were saying, right, here's a list of projects that could happen in the city that we would like to see happen. Not a prescriptive list, but sort of objectives, if you like, that stem from the vision, and across a number of different categories: district heating, street furniture, which is essentially street lighting and electric vehicle charging, renewable energy, smart grids, flexibility, battery storage, and those sorts of issues. And in total, Bristol came up with a potential investment portfolio over about £1 billion. And they went out to the market and they said, right, there's our ideas of how you could decarbonise. It's not prescriptive, but we think there's about £1 billion worth of investment opportunity here, and they're looking for a partner or partners who can invest in the city with private capital, matched with some public funding, to decarbonise the city. They've given investors some ideas, but they're not prescriptive. So we're interested, for example, we've got our own ideas of how we could decarbonise Bristol. But essentially, they wrote a prospectus. It was a 20-page document. Five or six different categories, investment opportunities. They went out to market to get some expressions of interest. They had 180 companies say, yes, we are interested in investing up to £1 billion in Bristol to make this happen. Some of those businesses were companies like us, some of them were foreign investors, some of them were smaller businesses. But it shows there's A, no shortage of money, and B, no shortage of businesses that will invest in a city if there is a clear vision and if there are some ideas of what needs to be done. So I wonder if Coventry could do something like that, is to create a prospectus, an idea of what's the investment potential in the city, what are the type of projects that companies like us, like Atashi, like Toshiba, like Macquarie Bank, like Triodos, those sorts of organisations, what could we invest in? And so that's the first thing. So I would say that's a good starting point to copy Bristol on, is their energy prospectus. So they had 180 responses, and they are now going out to tender to appoint probably one, maybe two investors, perhaps an energy investor and perhaps a financial investor too. So that procurement process will probably take a year or so to go through, by which point they will become the preferred energy partner, investment, climate change investor, if you like. So I just offer that as a really good example to Coventry, is to copy Bristol. I think is a great idea. They created a prospectus. They've now created a procurement process, and at the end of it, they will get a partner or a couple of partners who will invest up to $1 billion in their city to decarbonise Bristol by 2030. Is it technically possible? Well, I won't give the game away, but we've spent the last year looking at different technologies and coming up with designs and commercial models, and the numbers are looking pretty good. I really believe that it's possible to certainly decarbonise Bristol by 2050, if not earlier, by 2030. So if we can do it from a technological point of view by 2050, 2030, so can Coventry. If Bristol can attract £1 billion from private companies like us, so can Coventry. What's required is political leadership, and they've got that in Bristol, and in the form of good people at City Council. I believe we can do it as well. I know that Martin Reeves, the Chief Exec at Coventry, is certainly very interested in this agenda, and it strikes me that we have a golden opportunity in 2021 as City of Culture to really make this happen. With the eyes of the world, certainly the UK, will be on Coventry as City of Culture. Then we really have got to get motoring, excuse the pun, on this. Not just talk, but it would be really good, for example, if we were to copy Bristol, to actually get on and issue a prospectus and start the process to appoint an investor who could invest, say, $1 billion into Coventry to actually make this happen. So I'm happy to put people in touch with Bristol. I'm happy to come and share some of my thoughts with city leaders. But just to say that Malmo have done it, Berlin are doing it, Copenhagen are doing it, Bristol are doing it, and I would love to see it happen in Coventry. And so there's no shortage of money. The technologies are there, particularly if we electrify heat and make use of renewables and battery storage. We just need somebody with huge vision for the city to make this happen. And so I'll just finish it there. We can do it, but are we? And I really hope that we will. So thanks for listening. If you want to get in touch, then please do so. My email address is darren.gardner@eon.com, and you can phone me on 07773 642 378. Thanks very much. Cheers.